Muted? What do you mean muted? Hello? Are we good?
Hello.
I'm
Yeah,
Cheshire's a professional. Oh, there we go. Hi, everybody. I am Cheshire Master Debater. Welcome to Debate Hub. We're professionals here. I've got FTFE with me, and I've got Dapper with me. They're also known as Craig and Dapper, respectively. Hi, guys. Yes. How you doing? We are live on FTFE's channel, and we are live on Debate Hub. Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
You guys want to
if you're
tell
watching
everybody...
my channel,
yeah,
keep watching, but do me a favor, go and subscribe to Debate Hub. The link to the channel is pinned in the chat. So, yeah, watch on both, but definitely subscribe to Debate Hub.
Not to be...
Actually, no.
That's for your
unsubscribe from Craig and only subscribe to Debate Hub. I'm kidding. Don't do that.
Not to be sassy, but if we don't want to have to go to modern day debates anymore, you should totally come over here. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed.
One with 100% less Nazis.
Number of Nazis invited to this channel, 0. Number of Nazis sought out and invited to modern day debate, I don't know, like 8 or something?
Too many.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them. All right, so we're going to go in. We'll let Craig go first, and then we'll let Dapper go so they can introduce themselves, and then we will have 5 minutes on the board for each of them to state their opinions. But before they state their opinions, I will explain the question. So, Craig, do you want to tell everybody who you are?
Hello, I am Craig, otherwise known as Floofy the Freedom Eagle. Sorry, no, Fight the Flat Earth, it's FTFE. I spend an unhealthy amount of time on the internet talking to idiots. So I enjoy streams like this where I get to talk to people that I enjoy talking to and are actually smart. Also, dinosaurs. They're cool.
Thank you.
Dinosaurs are allegedly cool. Dapper, who are you?
I'm Dapper Dinosaur. I run a channel that's called Dapper Dinosaur. It's pretty easy to figure out. My channel mostly focuses on young Earth creationism, but sometimes we do other stuff. Like right now, we have a series going for my live streams on Saturday where we take a look at a couple guys who think that the 16
What do you mean muted?
edition...
Hello? Are we good?
Hello.
I'm Cheshire's a professional.
You.
What the fuck? There we go. Some of my audio started playing somewhere from somewhere else. Sorry, go on.
I'm so confused. Yeah, anyway, like the series I'm doing right now, we're looking at two guys who think that the 1611 edition of the King James Version of the Bible is actually the original version of the Bible, written by God before creation.
Oh.
Which is
pretty
special. Yes.
Even I know that's not true.
I think everyone but them knows it's not true. But also, if you think it's not true, they think you might be going to hell, so watch out.
Fair enough, I guess.
So,
all right.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Okay, so definitely make sure you subscribe to both of these people, but both of them are way bigger than me, so make sure you subscribe to me. But also, I'm going to be the moderator for this debate. Believe it or not, I actually do know how to moderate and will be jumping in if necessary. But there was also a poll that was done on the Debate Hub community tab for anybody interested in that, where I asked the debate question, which is the question for tonight, which is it child abuse to teach children that the earth is flat? Now, there is no contention here that flat earth is incorrect. We are not debating whether or not the earth is in fact flat. Nobody here, I think, in this call thinks that the earth is fucking flat. No, anybody know? Yeah, I didn't think so. So the question is about whether or not the education of children about a personal belief is considered abuse, ultimately, at the end of the day. Now, I asked this question 12 days ago, nearly 2 weeks this question has been up, and out of 270 votes, 74% said yes, it is child abuse, 10% said no, it is not child abuse, 11% said unsure, and 5% said neither. Now, after we let both of them state their positions, and once we get into after they've gone to do their rebuttal, I will pose the question again and see if we've changed anybody's minds. So, are our debaters ready?
Born ready,
Yes.
motherfucker.
All right.
I wasn't going to get more ready, so...
Odds, Craig wins and gets to go first. Dapper gets evens. I am rolling a d20 and 5. So Craig gets to go first.
Yay.
Before Craig goes, I will point out that I am watching both chats. I am watching the chat on Debate Hub. I am also watching Craig's chat. So Craig, don't be too worried about super chats. I am keeping an eye on it. I'm keeping stuff off to the side. So you can go ahead and do your thing without having to be too stressed out about it. The minutes are on the board. Are you ready?
Ready.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, is
not
it
me.
just 5 minutes? I thought we had 10.
Do you want 10? I'll give you 10 instead if you want, if you'd rather.
I think mine's about 7, I think.
All right, I'll give you 10 minutes. That's totally fine. 10 minutes apiece, and go when you're ready.
Hello. So today I am arguing that teaching children the flat earth belief is not harmless eccentricity, not innocent alternative thinking, and not just asking questions. It is psychological harm, mental abuse, and in many cases, frighteningly close to educational neglect. Because flat earth is not just a conspiracy theory, it's a gateway drug to total epistemic collapse. To believe the earth is flat, you don't just have to reject one scientific fact, you have to reject reality by committee. You have to believe that every pilot is lying to you, every ship captain is lying to you, every astronaut is lying to you, every physics teacher, every geography teacher, every surveyor, every engineer, every satellite technician, every meteorologist, every government scientist, every space agency, every university, every observatory, every map maker, all lying, and not just mistaken, deliberately lying, coordinated, complicit, malicious. And that is not skepticism, that is engineered paranoia. And when you put that worldview into the mind of a child, you are not making them free thinkers. You are teaching them to be alienated from reality itself. A child learns how to understand the world by building trust carefully and rationally. They learn that some people know more than they do in specific fields. They learn that evidence matters. They learn that if lots of independent people in different countries, in different professions, all arrive at the same answer using different methods, then that means something. Flat Earth destroys that. Because Flat Earth says, no, don't trust the pilot, don't trust the teacher, don't trust the textbook, and don't trust the scientist, don't trust the weather satellite, don't trust that telescope, don't trust your exam, don't trust your school, don't trust consensus, don't trust institutions, don't trust expertise, don't trust society. Just trust the bloke on YouTube with a ring light, a messiah complex, and the scientific literacy of damp toast. That is catastrophic for a child. And this matters because children are not just smaller adults. A child's mind is still developing. Their social world is still forming. Their identity is fragile. Their confidence is fragile. Their ability to tell the difference between justified doubt and pathological distrust is fragile. So what happens when, from a young age, you teach them that everyone is in on the lie? You create a child who is primed to be isolated. At school, they become the kid who says the earth is flat. The kid that says gravity's not real and that space is fake. The kid that says that every one of the teachers is lying. That doesn't make them respected by their peers. It makes them ostracized. It marks them out as different, confused, and socially vulnerable. And that damage is not theoretical. Education is not just where children learn facts. It's where they learn how to function in a shared reality with other people. Strip that away, poison that process, and you are not raising an independent thinker. You are sabotaging a child's ability to participate in normal life. That can be life-shaping and life-ruining. Because flat earth is never just flat earth. It's almost always bundled with a wider mentality that experts are corrupt, that institutions are evil, that evidence is fabricated, that contradiction is persecution, and that being corrected is proof that you are right. That is cultic framework. And once a child is taught that framework, they are more vulnerable to every other conspiracy that comes along. Anti-vax lies, government replacement fantasies, pseudo-scientific nonsense like chemtrails, end-time paranoia, secret cabals, global hoaxes, and medical misinformation. Flat Earth is not the destination, it is the training grounds. It teaches a child the method of conspiracy thinking. Start with the conclusion, reject all evidence against it, and treat every expert as compromised. Treat every contradiction as confirmation, and treat social rejection as proof of moral superiority. That is not education, that is indoctrination. Now let's talk plainly about educational neglect, because some people hear the phrase child abuse and immediately imagine only bruises and broken bones. That's not how child protection works. Neglect is abuse. Educational neglect is recognised in child protection laws and safeguarding guidance as a serious form of neglect in multiple jurisdictions. Child Welfare Information Gateway, summarising US state law, explains that neglect is a form of child maltreatment, and states including New Jersey and New York expressly include failures relating to education within neglect definitions. New Jersey's Department of Children and Families says neglect includes failing to provide adequate education, and New York's definition of a neglected child includes a child whose condition is impaired or placed in imminent danger because a parent failed to exercise a minimum degree of care. And courts have said so too. In New Jersey Division of Child Protection and Permanency versus BC&FC in 2020, the New Jersey Appellate Division quoted the state statute defining an abused or neglected child as one whose condition is impaired or in imminent danger of impairment because a parent failed to provide adequate education. The court then stated that a parent's failure to provide an education is a form of neglect and abuse under child protection law. In the matter of Brian H. in New York, the court held that excessive school absence could establish educational neglect and explicitly said that missing that much school can cause potential harm not only to a child's intellectual growth and development, but also through social isolation. And in the matter of John O. versus Cassandra P. in 2024, a New York appellate court reiterated that educational neglect can be based on a failure to supply an adequate education where the child has been impaired or is in imminent danger of impairment, and that extreme prolonged absenteeism can support that finding. So let's stop pretending that this is some wild rhetorical leap. The legal system already recognizes a simple principle. If you seriously damage a child's education and by doing so impair their development or put it at risk, that is not a quirky parenting choice and can become neglect and abuse. Now apply that principle here. What is Flat Earth doing to child educationally? It teaches them falsehood over evidence, suspicion over reasoning. It teaches them the curriculum is deception and that science class is propaganda. It teaches them that any correct answer that contradicts the family's dogma must be rejected. This is not a disagreement with one lesson. This is a rejection of the entire educational framework a child needs to function. And if a parent systematically feeds that to a child, the harm is not just academic, it is psychological. Because the child is being taught that the whole world is a lie. And the only safe space is inside the conspiracy. That's exactly how isolation works. That's exactly how coercive belief systems work. That is exactly how you cripple a young person's confidence in their own ability to reason. And the defenders of this nonsense will say, well, parents have the right to raise their children with beliefs. No one disputes that parents have rights, but rights are not absolute when they become harmful. You do not have the right to cripple a child's education. You do not have the right to train them into paranoia. You do not have the right to make them socially and intellectually dysfunctional just because you enjoy pretending NASA is run by cartoon villains. Children are not property, they are people, and they have a right to an education grounded in reality, and this is the heart of it. Teaching Flat Earth to a child means teaching them that everyone is lying. Not a few people, not one institution, but everyone. That kind of worldview is corrosive enough in an adult. In a child, it is devastating. It isolates them from peers, estranges them from teachers, poisons their education, distorts their judgment, and makes them easy prey for every other conspiracy that comes next. And this is why Flat Earth is not merely false, it's abusive in its effects. Because when you take a child who depends on you for truth, and you train them to distrust reality, distrust education, expertise, and distrust the society they must one day live in, you're not protecting them, you are harming them. And this is why teaching children Flat Earth is not harmless nonsense. It's not just another option, it is mental abuse through indoctrination, and in the clearest cases, it belongs in the same conversation as severe educational neglect. Thank you.
All right, everybody in the chat, this is a polite place that is not necessarily blood sport, so if everybody wants to send clap emojis, well done. Well-reasoned argument. I approve. I like it. I like it so much that it makes me excited to hear what Dapper has to say. I'm curious to know what Dapper's position is going to be, and what I'm really excited for is the rebuttals. So, Dapper, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, yes.
All right, perfect. So let's get our timer up on the board. Let's make Dapper a little bit bigger, and we are ready. Start when you're good to go.
All right, well, thank you for that, Craig. I am not here, first of all, to say that teaching your kid Flat Earth is not a bad idea or is not harmful. But there is a legal and I think a moral distinction between mis- or maltreatment and abuse. And at one end, we have things that are harmful to a child, but generally do not rise to the level of needing an intervention from a state authority. And at the other end, we have child abuse that is so severe that it is grounds for removal of that child from the home immediately. So, I think that teaching someone Flat Earth per se generally falls below the level of something that should result in a removal from the home. And for me, child abuse is things that can, on their own, provided they are not corrected or changed, are things that can lead to removal of the child. And so For me, teaching flat Earth per se is not that. However, it could contribute to things like child abuse. I will not pretend that it couldn't contribute to educational neglect or something like that. Now, I plan to get more into educational neglect in my rebuttal because I did not prepare a whole lot about it, and so this is still my opening. So, one of the things I want to emphasize is that we do not have any real statistics on what happens to children who are raised believing in flat Earth. Flat Earth has not been a thing for long enough that any realistic science can be done on that. So all I have to go on is what happens as a result of child abuse if someone is in fact taken from the home. What harm is caused in the foster care system? Because to me, it only makes sense to say that unless the effects of the abuse are going to be worse than the likely outcome from the foster care system, that behavior probably should not be treated as child abuse per se on its own. It might be a contributing factor, like I said. So first I want to get into a few of the statistics. Now these statistics are coming from educational and employment outcomes of adults formerly placed in foster care, results from Northwest Foster Care Alumni Study, Pecora et al. From Science Direct, published in April 2007. However, I've looked up several other papers, and all of them generally corroborate that these are reasonable outcomes, so I'm not going to cite every single statistic that I could find. But approximately 34% of foster care children change schools 7 to 9 times while they're in foster care, and the rest do it less than that, but all of them do it on average more than twice. 30% do it more than 10 times. So we're talking, 64% of children in foster care end up changing schools 7 or more times. 40% change placement in the foster care system 1.23 times per year. That's changing your entire household, who you're living with, who the adults taking care of you are, who the foster siblings around you are. When adults leave the foster care system, only 33% of them have managed to get a driver's license. Only 38% of them have $250 or more US in cash to their name. 32% of children in the foster care system report maltreatment in the foster care system. 22% of adults who exit the foster care system will be homeless within a year. 33% of them end up living below the poverty level, including their entire household, whichever one they move into. That household will be below the poverty level. The results of the foster care system are atrocious. They have significantly lower rates of college graduation. They have somewhat lower rates of high school graduation. Children are not routinely, but not infrequently, lost in the system. There are many children, no one knows where they are. So the question is teaching someone these absurdly stupid and harmful things, yes, worse than that? Do we really think that just teaching your kid that the earth is flat is going to result in an over 1 in 5 chance of your kid becoming homeless within a year of becoming an adult? I would need to see some evidence for that. And because stats and evidence are great for making a scientific point or a sociological point, that's great, and that's why I've used some of these statistics, but they're not super great for giving someone the core of the story. And so I also want to tell a story that was related to me by a friend of mine who, in fact, adopted several children from the foster care system. And I want to tell one story in particular. He and his wife had adopted a 4.5-year-old child who had been with 10 different families, including one that had been a failed adoption up to that point. And this child was only 4.5. Imagine switching not just your home, but your family 10 times by the time you were 4.5. This child was playing on the floor in the living room during the social worker's final visit. And the adoption had been going well. The child was happy. My friend and his wife were happy. Things seemed to be going all right. And the social worker told them that they should expect this to be her last visit because it looked like everything was good and she was going to sign off completely on the adoption. But she needed to tell the kid that. So she said to the kid, "Hey, kid's name, I'm keeping this anonymous. I have to discuss something with you after this." That kid went into a panic, ran out of the room into the farthest room he could find, which happened to be the kitchen, and pressed himself against the wall as hard as he could while crying. Because what he thought was about to happen was that he was going to switch homes again. I have a hard time thinking that that's going to be something that results from telling your kid a stupid thing like the Earth is flat. And I happen to be someone who was taught some really stupid stuff as a kid. I was a young Earth creationist. That's almost as stupid as the Earth being flat. And yeah, I believe there were a whole bunch of scientists lying to me. But you know what? None of the young Earth creationists that I know had even close to a 22% chance of experiencing homelessness within a year of becoming an adult. And so, if we're going to say that per se, teaching your kid flat Earth is child abuse, not just that it can contribute to child abuse, but that it is child abuse on its own, I want to see some really good evidence that the results of this are worse than the results of removing a child. Because that's what child abuse is. It's the things that can get your children taken away. Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that if you do something that's child abuse, your child is going to be taken away immediately. There is a system of escalations and check-ins with social services and things that have to happen, right? But ultimately, if the behavior from the parent that constitutes child abuse persists, that is the remedy. And I don't think it's fair to say that the remedy for teaching your child that the Earth is flat should ever be subjecting them to the foster care system. Now, these numbers are in fact for the US. However, everything I could find said that they were similar in other developed countries like Canada, the UK, various European countries. In fact, the story I told was not from a US foster care system. So that is my concern, is that if we actually decide as a society that this is child abuse per se, that we will be subjecting children to even worse circumstances. Now, I also want to say, I know that a number of flat earthers who teach their children flat earth are also child abusers in ways that do not involve the flat earth. I think we all remember when Nathan Oakley decided to physically abuse a child on stream. But that is child abuse that is not the same thing as teaching your child flat earth. If Nathan Oakley had been teaching his child excellent high-level science, but also beating his child, that would still be child abuse. And it might be that his teaching of flat earth is contributing to his abuse of that child, but it's not the same thing. And so that is just my entire argument. Yes, it is bad. No, it should not happen. Yes, it can contribute to child abuse, but on its own, I do not think it is child abuse, primarily because I do not see good reason to think that it is going to result in worse outcomes than the remedy for child abuse, which is ultimately, if it persists, removal from the home and placement into a foster care system. And that is me. I'm done.
I want to say, first off, I'm very, very impressed. Yeah, clap emojis, everybody, because we are respectful for our debaters here. I am looking forward to
I'm just scared of the dinosaur. I don't want to get eaten.
I think the thumbnail demonstrated that pretty well.
That's a great thumbnail.
I was really actually very proud of that thumbnail, so thank you for acknowledging that. First off, thank you for both of our debaters. Second off, I would like to point out that both of you were like within seconds of the amount of time that you've used between the two of you, like within seconds of each other. So well done for being almost exactly on point with each other. It's greatly appreciated. And we want to point out, FTFE, I know you have a super chat goal going on your channel. Do you want to shout that out?
Yeah, if you reach the super chat goal, guys, very simple. I do a little dance. I make a little love, and I get down tonight. Get down tonight.
That just sounds like they're paying you to have a good time.
It does.
That's how this works.
I say that as someone who runs a TTRPG channel where I have monetization on, so, you know, what do I have to talk about?
I am keeping an eye on Super Chat, so if you do have questions, please tag at Debate Hub, either on my channel or on FTFE channel. There will be a discussion part of this after the rebuttals, where we will be able to allow the both of them to then sort of just start exchanging ideas, but I want to be able to jump in with your comments as well, guys, just so make sure you tag me so I don't miss anything, and if I miss something, I apologize for that. That's as unfortunate for me. So Craig is going to go next with his rebuttal. Craig, how much time do you think that you need? Do you need more than 10 minutes?
5 minutes, I guess. I think the rebuttal only really needs about 5 minutes, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and we're having an open discussion afterwards, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have an open discussion. Do you want me to just leave it at 10
awesome.
just for the sake of discussion, or like just for the sake of like you don't feel like you have to rush?
Just 5 minutes is fine, I think.
5 minutes is fine. They've debated, they've discussed, they've agreed. 5 minutes is fine. I will adjust that to 5 minutes, and we will go for a 5-minute rebuttal.
You cool with that, Dapper?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was actually going to suggest to Chesh that 5 seemed fine to me.
Yeah, 5 is good. All right, we'll move in, Craig, whenever you are ready.
Okay, right. So Dapper is kind of trying to define abuse as the worst case outcome, but abuse doesn't mean children are automatically taken away. Most abuse cases never result in removal. They result in support, intervention, and family work. From HM government working together to safeguard children. Safeguarding includes early help, providing support as soon as a problem emerges, and to improve outcomes for children. This means that the system is designed to intervene early, not jump straight to removing children. From the National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children, services aim to support parents and carers and help families stay together where possible. Abuse/neglect normally triggers parenting programs, like literal training for parents, support plans, monitoring, not immediate removal. From the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence Guidance on Child Welfare, or NICE, they recommend parent training programs, family therapy interventions, structured support to improve parenting capacity. These are standard responses to neglect, emotional harm, developmental risk, not foster care. Removal is a last resort, right? Under UK law, Children Act 1989, the court must consider the child's welfare. Removal only happens if harm is significant and cannot be managed at harm, meaning that most cases of neglect equal support and intervention, not removal, right? The way that Dapper kind of phrased it is simply not how child protection works. Abuse doesn't automatically mean that children are taken into care. The UK safeguarding system is built around early help, supporting families, providing parenting guidance, and using interventions like family therapy. Removal is an absolute last resort, used only when harm is severe and can't be managed. And I think if a continued push for a child to say the earth is flat and ignore all other education, damaging them mentally, socially, ostracizing them from their peers, if that continues even after several interventions and trainings, that is where maybe removal should be considered. But also, foster care doesn't always have to be permanent. It can be a temporary solution while things are managed in the background, right? So pointing to foster care as a definition of abuse completely misunderstands how abuse is actually handled, at least in the UK. So it's kind of like saying that cancer only counts when the patient's in hospice. No, you identify the harm early and you treat it before it gets to that point, right? So if a teacher, yeah, I absolutely do think that teaching children that the earth is flat is child abuse, right? But I also think that can be managed. If a teacher figures out that they're being told that and their child's being told to ignore what the teacher is saying, then they have duty to report these things. And then that's when parental training and family monitoring and therapy sessions come in. You can absolutely think that the earth is flat if you want to. You're a fucking dumbass if you do, but you can absolutely do that, right? But you should not push that onto your children, especially at the cost of ostracizing them from the rest of society. If interventions like family therapy and parental training programs work, removal isn't necessary. Removal is an absolute last resort. I don't think that teaching your child that the earth is flat would necessarily result in removal. It would result in monitoring of that child's education and to make sure that they are staying up to standards with their peers. I only think removal happens when continued severe abuse, more physical, is in the mix. I don't think that removal is something that would come from teaching your child that the earth is flat, because there is ways to mitigate the damage to a child. If it is extreme enough that you keep pushing it and you keep demanding that child ignore their teachers, keeping them off of school, keep making them absent from school all of the time, not letting them see their friends and stuff, then maybe in that case, removal would be needed, because clearly you're not fit to be a parent. And if you're not fit to be a parent, then keeping the child in that family is more damaging to the child than going into foster care. I am not for putting people into foster care. I don't think it's a great idea. I had friends that were in foster care. They were troubled people, right? And I would always push for other ways to manage it. But it's just a fact of the world that we live in that some people are not suitable parents, and they unfortunately should have their children taken away. But I do not think that necessarily teaching the children that the earth is flat should automatically result in removal of the child from the family.
Well done, right at the time. Good job. Well done, Craig. I think that was a pretty good rebuttal, and I'm very much looking forward to what Dapper has to say. Dapper, do you want to shout your channel out before you go? No? You can say no, Dapper. Is he muted? Dapper, are you muted?
Yeah, I did mute myself. Sorry.
Yeah! Yeah, shout out your channel before you go into your thing. And don't forget, everybody, round of applause for our debaters. Thank you. Greatly appreciated. Put your clapping emojis.
Yeah, I'm linked in the channel title, or sorry, the video title, at least on Debate Hub. Dapper Dinosaur. I don't normally do flat Earth stuff, but sometimes I do. It's very rare, very rare. But yeah. Actually, before I start, there is one quick thing I want to say, which is I'm actually going to I'm going to quote the Bible.
Oh, he's going to quote the Bible, guys. Yes,
yeah.
do.
Fucking
please.
love the Bible.
Fuck yeah.
Proverbs 18:17 says, "One who first states a case seems right until the other comes and cross-examines." And I just want to say that during my rebuttal, I could respond to everything in both Craig's opening and his rebuttal, but I am not going to. I am going to stick to the opening because I feel like that is the proper way to do a formal debate. And I will address things from Craig's rebuttal during the open discussion section so as to make it fair, so that I'm not the one who gets to have the last say on all of that stuff, because that seems unfair to me. So I will be restricting it to just...
Yeah, I think that is reasonable. I think that is fair. I will remind everybody, guys, you guys are allowed, those who are viewing are allowed to make arguments. If you think you have an argument that's going to like pwn one or two or both or everyone in the room, please be sure to send it to me. Please make sure. And we have a super chat on FTFE's channel from Bill for 2 that says, "Dance, biatch, dance." I also want to see Craig dance. Let's go. All right, Dapper, start whenever you are ready.
All right. Well, so I was taking notes during Craig's opening, and it was, basically what I've heard Craig say before on this topic, because you might or might not know, this is actually the second time we've debated this topic. So that's an interesting little thing there. Most of it I actually don't disagree with. It's certainly not harmless. I do think there is psychological harm. I do think that Flat Earth is a gateway to other conspiracy theories. I do think it can cause a lack of trust in authorities and expertise. All of these are things that I don't disagree with, which is why I think that teaching kids Flat Earth is harmful, not harmless. So the only big thing that Craig said in there that I am going to really discuss is educational neglect, because I think this is possibly the strongest argument, because educational neglect is indeed a recognized, and I don't dispute, it's a recognized form of child abuse, which I do not dispute. However, the problem is that educational neglect is not simply teaching your kids silly things. It is, in fact, well defined. In every circumstance that I can find, it is generally things like failing to enroll a child in school, or excessive absences from school, or, in the case of a homeschooling environment, not providing adequate education that would meet or be similar to the standards that a child would receive in a public school. Well, the problem is, what that means then is, if you teach your child that the earth is flat at home, but you send your child to school and they do not have excessive absences and they are able to perform academically, then that does not seem to meet the definition of educational neglect. Now, that does not mean that flat earthers might not neglect their children educationally because of the flat earth. But what that means is flat earth is sort of an exacerbating factor in an actual instance of child abuse, which is the educational neglect. And so in that case, it's not the flat earth that's the educational neglect. It is the keeping from school, the failure to provide adequate education at home, and so on. And so for that reason, I would say that while I do agree that educational neglect can be a factor, it is itself the form of child abuse. So in terms of the other things like lack of trust in authority, consensus and expertise, the pervasive conspiracy, things like that, this is also a problem with a lot of other pseudoscience beliefs that people believe, right? Like, if you're going to teach your kid that chemtrails are a thing, well, you're going to have to believe in a vast conspiracy involving basically everyone who works at an airline, except maybe like the stewards and stewardesses. I don't know. if you want to teach your kid young Earth creationism, you're going to have to teach them that all the scientists are lying, and at least the science teachers are at least duped, if not lying. And that also was going to extend into lots of government bodies, because lots of government bodies, are based on various science-based things, like health institutes, like the National Institute of Health in the UK, or the Department of Health and Human Services in the United States, things like that, right? It's still going to be a problem. But we don't generally treat teaching a child a pseudoscience or a conspiracy theory as abuse per se. Now, it absolutely could lead to educational neglect. I do not argue that. And so, because generally we do not teach, or we do not treat teaching crazy ideas as per se child abuse, I'm not sure why it is that Flat Earth is making the exception. Maybe it's just simply that it's so much worse. But at that point, we run into a continuum problem. What if, and when the problem with a continuum problem is we need to make distinctions. So, for instance, a child might be taught at home in the form of saying every once in a while, yeah, the Earth is flat. Your teachers are wrong. I don't know. Maybe that's low on the end, and then we would say it's not child abuse. But the problem is, I'm here to argue that teaching flat Earth is not child abuse per se, which means on its own it does not constitute child abuse. And I don't think that Craig established that it did during his opening. Now, of course, I'm about to end this, and we'll get to the open discussion where I will have more to say about Craig's rebuttal. And I look forward to that, and I'm going to give up the rest of my time because I don't think I need that last minute.
Totally valid. So, all right, I think we have a really good premise for at least both of you, and I think the people in both chats, both on Debate Hub and on FTFE that's live right now, that I think they understand where everybody's coming from. And the question seems to be, at the end of the day, a little bit of what constitutes abuse. Because there's a lot of agreement going on. Right? I think Craig and Dapper both agree with each other. Flat Earth is bad. Teaching a child Flat Earth is bad. But does it reach this level, yes or no? And it seems to be, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it seems to be that sometimes yes and sometimes not quite enough. But we do have a couple of questions, and I just want to know if you guys want to get into asking each other's questions first, or if you want to get into chat first.
I think if you have questions, I'd like.
You guys both want questions?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Hold on. Questions from you or questions for each other?
Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
Confused. Go ahead.
What do you mean? Questions from you or questions from Dapper? Because I think the questions can just be in the open discussion.
Yeah, so do you guys want to ask each other questions, or do you guys want me to jump in with chat to start the conversation? Because if you guys have questions for each other.
Questions, yeah.
All right, yeah. Well, we may as well stay on route and be we'll let Craig go first. If Craig has any questions he wants to ask Dapper in the in discussion / rebuttal format, go right ahead. And there's not really a time frame on these ones, but I will cut you off if you go if your answer is super duper long and starting to go off into oblivion, I'll be can you summarize? But yeah. Craig, do you want to go first then there?
Right, so Dapper, you've already agreed that it is harmful.
Yes.
But I guess your argument is it educational neglect? Am I right?
It's not just that it's educational neglect, because it seems pretty clear to me that it's not educational neglect on its own. It could be a part of educational neglect. It could be a motive for educational neglect. But if a child is being taught the Earth is flat at home, but is also being sent to a school that is one that is actually, following the curriculum guidelines that are set forth by whatever teaching authority there is, it does not seem like it would meet the definition for educational neglect. It would only seem like it would do that if the child was homeschooled and then was not taught the things that were required by whatever a curriculum is, imposed on homeschoolers by whatever state that is. And by state, I just mean government. But in that case, it would be the failure to educate the kid at home, regardless of flat Earth, that would be the educational neglect. My argument is simply that, per se, teaching a child flat Earth, I don't think on its own is ever a reason, no matter how persistent it is, on its own to cause removal. And for that reason, I don't think it should be treated as neglect. Although I would be open to seeing it being treated as an aggravating factor for child neglect. Maybe if a worker, it's like a social worker, is in the house suspecting educational neglect and flat Earth is a part of that, that might be something that could make it more likely to find that there is educational neglect. But on its own, I don't think it would count.
Okay, so you do agree that if it is educational neglect, it's abuse, because they're basically the same thing.
Yes.
And both the USA and the UK define educational neglect as a form of abuse, right? So
Yes.
I'm going to do a couple of citations from HM Government working together to safeguard children. Neglect includes the persistent failure to meet a child's needs likely to result in the serious impairment of their development. And from the National Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children, educational neglect includes failing to ensure a child receives an education or preventing them from benefiting from it. And I think that's an important part, preventing them from benefiting from it. Because if you're teaching your child the earth is flat and they're coming home and saying, well, I was told the earth's a globe, you're going to be like, no, ignore that. Ignore what you were taught at school. The earth is flat. Okay, so you've already agreed this causes harm. So it hinges on whether it is educational neglect. And the United States agree that educational neglect isn't just not sending a child to school. It also includes undermining their ability to learn, blocking access to accurate knowledge, which Flat Earth definitely does, and teaching them to reject education itself, which is a fundamental principle of teaching anybody, not just children, anybody, that the earth is flat. You teach them to reject education. We've all heard it in Flat Earth debates, education is just indoctrination, right? So if you are teaching your child that the earth is flat, you are meeting the legal definitions in both the United States and the United Kingdom of educational neglect by blocking their ability to benefit from the education and teaching them to reject the education itself. So if a parent teaches a child that the teachers are lying, tells them the curriculum is false, or encourages them to reject established knowledge, then they are actively preventing that child from benefiting from education. And that, as far as I can tell, fits all the definitions of educational neglect.
What's the question?
Do you agree that then that it would,
Okay.
if you are teaching your child that the earth is flat, and all the things that entails, like
Right.
rejecting education, would you agree that then it actually meets the legal definitions of educational neglect and therefore child abuse?
So I do think that there are certainly circumstances where it could escalate to the point that it does constitute educational neglect if the child is actually being prevented from things like accessing educational resources, or is being basically taught to the point of being unable to basically learn in school. So it is possible that something could become that extreme, but that's also true for all sorts of other anti-science beliefs, right? Like I'll go back to me having been raised as a young Earth creationist. That is an absurd, crazy belief that would require teachers to be lying to me if it were true. But that doesn't mean that I was unable to learn to read, to even learn a lot of science, to learn to do math. And overall, I think I came out as a reasonably intelligent and well-informed person, despite that disadvantage. And so I don't think that on its own, teaching children things that are incorrect is always going to be educational neglect, even if it's very, very incorrect, and even if the logical entailments of it are extreme, because it is in both cases. And so I would say that, well, yes, it is possible that educational neglect could result from a flat earth belief and teaching it. On its own, teaching a child flat earth does not necessarily rise to that level in every case. And again, my position is not that teaching flat earth could never be a part of abuse, just that on its own, it's not. So for instance, when I say on its own, I mean, like, let's say you're raising a child and you just say, hey, I believe the earth is flat and you should too, and here are my reasons. That's teaching a child the earth is flat. If you then let them continue on with their educational system, but also insist that you believe the earth is flat and that you would like them to as well, that I don't think prevents them from being educated, nor does it prevent them from gaining access to information. And so I don't think that would be educational neglect. Now, it would be interesting if we could have a court case about this, because then that would actually give us some examples as to what actual judges and lawyers who are experts in family law and child abuse and things like that say. But short of that, I think we both have to go with our inexpert opinions on the law and say, I don't think it always is going to constitute educational neglect. Although, like I've said, it certainly could if taken to an extreme. But my argument is about teaching flat earth per se, which does not necessarily mean it's going to be to the extreme.
See, I would disagree that it wouldn't ever constitute an educational neglect. The very basis of teaching flat Earth is to reject education. So even if you're letting your child go ahead and have his education, go to school, when they come home, you're then going to, if you're teaching them flat Earth, you are, by the very nature of it, going to say, well, what you learned at school today is wrong. The physics they taught you was a lie. And that, in my opinion, would be stopping them benefiting from the education, which is
your argument is that they're anti-education, right? Like they're basically like throwing the whole thing out the window.
Not just anti-education. It would literally stop them benefiting from that education because they're not allowed to apply those things in their life because the Earth is flat. They couldn't apply for any jobs in engineering. They couldn't, if they want to work with something with gravity. No, my dad told me gravity's not real. All these things are, but on their base, they're preventing the child from benefiting from what the education system is trying to give them. And that meets both the UK and the US's definition of educational neglect, specifically the stopping them from benefiting from that. If you're just saying the Earth's flat, right, but leaving it at that, that's not really teaching them the Earth's flat, it's just telling them. But if you are actively teaching them that the Earth is flat, you have to tell them to reject what the school is telling them, which is, by its definition, stopping them benefiting from the education they are getting at school.
All right, I'm going to jump in here, and I want to give Dapper a chance to ask some questions to Craig, because we got about, 3 or 4 questions out of Craig, I think, in totality, even if they're not, formal questions. So I want to give Dapper the opportunity to ask questions in return. I think Craig's response to the questions is valid. So I also threw into the debate hub, there is now a poll up again that is an identical poll to the one that was on the community tab that was, is it child abuse to teach a child/children that the Earth is flat? So if you would like to vote, go ahead over there. Craig, if you want to start that on your channel as well, if you want to give them the opportunity to vote, that is totally fine. Again, make sure you clap. Everybody clap emojis. Everybody's doing a very good job.
Guys, on my channel, I'm not going to put it on my channel. I'd like you to go over to Debate Hub and vote on it there to get the interaction over there.
Thank you so much.
Remember, if you super chat me, I'm going to dance for you. If you don't super chat me, I'm going to dance naked.
Oh, this is a threat.
Some people might be into that.
They might. They have to. Those people then have to spend time in the chat convincing the other people to not super chat. I will point out that I have about 4 questions so far from chat, both from Craig's chat and from the Debate Hub chat, and I am keeping an eye on that. So if you do have questions, or if you want to posit a specific question to one or other of the debaters, I am keeping track of those. We will get to them. We're just going to get to them after they have a chance to, roast each other or poke holes in each other's arguments. So Dapper, it is your turn. By all means, please.
Thank you. So I think one thing that might be a disconnect here is what we mean by teaching, which I didn't actually think was going to be the disconnect, but I think we might have a different agreement. I think that to a large extent, because parents are trusted individuals by children just by default, that any parent who tells a child that something is in fact true is to a large degree teaching that child that thing. But I think you might disagree with me. So could you clarify what you mean by teaching? Because it could be that that's just the core of our disagreement.
Instructing on subjects, giving knowledge, any form of giving new skills and abilities or knowledge to a child or to a student of any kind is teaching.
Okay. So it seems like in that case, if it's any form of giving knowledge or instruction, that it could be as simple as simply saying when asked or when it comes up, well, I believe the Earth is flat. And then perhaps giving a few reasons. Would that constitute teaching under your definition?
Yes. If you are giving instructions to a child as to why you think the Earth is flat, that is teaching them that the Earth is flat. You are giving them your reasons, your explanations, what you would perceive logic, even though flat earthers don't understand logic. Right. That is at least I don't think flat earthers are capable of teaching, but it is an attempt to teach the child. Does that work better?
Well, if they're incapable of teaching, then I think that the answer to this debate is simply that there's no such thing as teaching a child that the Earth is flat. So they have to be capable to some degree. Otherwise, what do we mean, right? So, would you agree that
they're trying to teach it? They're
okay?
You're saying
So-
that the attempt doesn't have to necessarily be successful, but that the parent has a goal of convincing the child that the Earth is in fact flat, regardless of the actual nature of the world.
Yeah, they're trying to teach, whether they're successful or not. Is that my hope in general is that the kids are smarter than the parents and are going to realize that their parents are talking absolute nonsense and just kind of, oh, my dad's just a bit of an idiot. I'll go to school and learn that anyway. But
Okay.
you are, if you're, as a parent, you're trying to push your knowledge that you think you have that is superior to the rest of the world. You are trying to teach your view above all of the others. So, I mean, that is teaching. Whether it's successful or not doesn't really change the definition of teaching.
No, I get that. All right. So, is there anything other than degree of wrongness that you would say would separate teaching a child young Earth creationism from teaching a child flat Earth?
No, I would say both of those could constitute educational neglect and therefore child abuse, because both of them tell you to reject the things that you learn at school. And rejecting education is one of the actual definitions under the National Society of Prevention and Equality of Children of educational neglect. If you're a young Earth creationist, then you're told to ignore carbon dating and things like that, and the fact we know the Earth is billions of years old. And I think that also would come under the purview of educational neglect, because you are teaching your child to reject the education that you get at school.
Okay, so should parents who are persistent in teaching their children young Earth creationism while also sending them to a public school that is teaching them, just regular public school stuff, should persistence in that be grounds eventually, if it's unable to be corrected, for removal of those children from that home?
In an extreme circumstance, as a final last resort, as I mentioned in my rebuttal, it is a last resort. There would be many things to come before that. There would be intervention. There would be parental training, even fines and things like that for continued. A court could literally order you not to say that to your child, and if you continue to do that, then the court can impose fines and things like that, and even maybe jail time if you continue to do it. But even that doesn't necessarily mean that the child is put into foster care if there's another family member that's able to take them. Foster care would be an absolute final last resort if the totality of the circumstances show that you are incapable of being an effective parent.
Okay, well, in this circumstance, in this hypothetical that I'm asking you to consider, let's consider that there is no physical abuse, there is no mental abuse in the sense of withholding of affection or calling names or bullying of the children or anything like that. But what is happening is, and we'll assume that there are no family members who can take the children, and so what the parents are doing are continuing to reinforce the idea that the Earth is young and that evolution is fake. And do you think that would ever rise to the level of, okay, fine, we're going to have to take these kids out? So there's nothing else going on. There's no one's getting hurt physically. The parents are loving. They're kind. They're providing them. They're letting them go to school. They're providing them with adequate food, shelter, clothing, all that stuff.
I don't think that personally the courts would take that to the level of removing them. I do think the courts would do things like imposing fines.
Yes.
Which could escalate, and the law actually states that it's an unlimited fine as well. So it's not just $100 here, $100 there. It could rise to tens of thousands. And my hope would be that would scare the parents into not telling the children that. If the family's loving, then that is good for the child. But I don't think a loving household, giving your child hugs, saying you're proud of them, etc., is a replacement for making them a useful member of society. I think if the continued ignoring of court-ordered things to do, like not to tell your child that, not to tell an education's wrong. The only option the courts would have would be to remove the child if you continued to break the law and not do what the courts say. And my reason for saying that is that, like I said, being loving, being affectionate is not a replacement for making a valuable, useful member of society. Love bombing is a thing, All right,
I'm going to give Dapper one more question, then we're going to move into chat questions. So go ahead.
All right, so I want to preface this with a quick statement, which is to say that generally speaking, both in the UK and the United States, courts are not generally treating things like young Earth creationism or other extreme religious beliefs, and let's be honest, flat Earth is almost always a religious belief, as grounds for saying that there's any legal consequences on their own, right? Courts are not imposing fines for young Earth creationist parents or for Jehovah's Witness parents who are teaching their kids not to trust the government because they're all going to come after the Jehovah's Witnesses when Armageddon happens tomorrow. And so this is less of a debate question and more of a I'm just curious. Do you think that should change? Should we start going after parents who teach children that blood transfusions are cannibalism, or who teach children that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, or that Armageddon is going to happen tomorrow and the government's going to come get them?
Yeah, I think we absolutely should be telling parents that's wrong and putting legal things in place to stop them doing that, because that is harmful to a child's development. It is mentally damaging that child in a way that they will not be able to survive in a modern world. Blood transfusions and stuff, if you teach a child to reject blood transfusions, that can literally lead to the child dying. Although recent changes in things like blood transfusions, Jehovah's Witnesses are now allowing blood transfusions if it's your own blood, which is interesting. So you can stockpile your own blood and then get that back, but that's just another conversation.
You were just save this for later on the shelf.
I mean,
yeah, sorry. I read an article about that earlier, and it came to mind. I was thinking
interesting.
About it. But I do think that there should be interventions in place for consistently giving your children, fundamentally and obviously wrong information. You shouldn't just be able to say whatever you want to your kid without pushback from someone, and that someone sometimes has to be the government, because they are the ones that are trying to run a successful society.
To be clear, I didn't say that you should be allowed to say anything to your child. That is not my
right.
position.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like Craig is saying that now correct me if I'm wrong, because we do want to come to consensus where we can come to consensus. That's one of the points of debate. So it sounds to me like both of you agree that this is problematic, but you disagree on the severity when it is isolated. However, that maybe there needs to be some adaptation or advancement when it comes to just teaching a belief that is blatantly wrong.
I wouldn't say that quite is my position. I would say that my position is probably more accurately captured as saying that to say that something is child abuse per se requires that at its most mild form, it still constitutes child abuse. And I don't think that the mildest form of teaching a child that the Earth is flat is child abuse. And I would say that also anything that is child abuse on its own would be enough to remove a child if it is persistent and there aren't other options. And I don't think that that would ever be a good idea for flat Earth at the mildest form, because I'm not assuming the worst case scenario in any case.
Sure.
Right? I'm trying to assume the least damaging position, because my concern when it comes to laws is always, what's the worst thing that can happen for the least damaging option? Because that, for me, is where I judge whether or not laws are going to be just or unjust. Like, if it's, you'll almost never be murdered for jaywalking. Okay, well, can you be murdered for jaywalking? Because that seems like a really big problem.
Sure. So then I would posit to Craig. I would say, Craig, what do you think is the mildest version of teaching a child flat Earth?
Just saying to your kid, I think the Earth's flat.
Sure.
And I think you should think that too, right? But not pushing it. If you're willing to let your kid go to school and take up the education and not tell them that what they're learning is incorrect, but still say that you really do think the Earth is flat, then that's fine. But pushing that belief on a child to the extent of making them reject education is when it becomes a problem. And personally,
Sure.
I believe the same with religion. If religion gets in the way of education, then it shouldn't be allowed to be pushed on a child. I am of the opinion that teaching children religion is basically child abuse because it's lying to them about stuff.
Religion does seem to be the
it's-
next step. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, Flat Earth can be very much like a religion or even a cult, with the
Sure.
way that the people that push it are so fervent in its, in insistent that is the truth and that everyone else is lying to them.
All right. Well,
My
we have a couple.
main argument
Sorry, go ahead.
lies around the fact that when you are teaching a child that everybody else in the world is lying to you, that is damaging on more than just an educational level. It's a psychological mindfuck.
I definitely see both of the arguments here. So let's get into some of the questions from the chat. The first one is from Prosthetic Head for Dapper that says, that isn't that a great name? That's fantastic. This is from Craig's chat that asked, which flat earthers should kids aspire to become? Grifters or paranoid fringe dwellers?
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. No child should be aspire to be a flat earther, and no one should teach their children flat earth. I am not in any way saying that it is a good or acceptable thing to teach your child that the earth is flat.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like I do not believe in corporal punishment, but if a parent every few months swats a child's hand away from a cookie jar, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's child abuse either.
Sure. FTFE, do you have a response to that one?
Sorry, what was the question again?
The question is which type of flat earther should a child aspire to be?
Right,
a
okay.
grifter or a paranoid fringe dweller?
Well, if anything, if you're gonna be one, and that is the thing that you've decided, then go on to be a grifter, because at least you can make some
I
money.
agree. Yeah, I'm with Craig.
But
if
no,
you were
not
asking
right.
me, I would say be a grifter because at least you're making money.
So you're
And
saying
your
that
friends.
voice is better than most of them?
Yeah, we live in a capitalist
No, the
society,
Dave Weiss is
man.
still
I don't know
scum,
what.
but,
All right.
But
Hey,
obviously,
you can be a
no
better
child should
kind of
ever
scum.
aspire to be any type of flat earther. But if you need to make money, then because we all have to eat. Let's face it. And Trump's made the price of everything go up a lot. So
It's gonna
Craig,
get
do you
worse.
have a flat earther tier list? Because you need to make one if you don't.
Ooh, that would be fun.
I've done a couple of
it.
flat earth tier lists. So I think it needs change. I think it needs updating. Honestly.
Updating. Yeah, let's
One
go.
thing, you had to at least take Jaren off of the tier list.
True.
Yeah.
Did your debate with him as a moderator go well for you? Did you enjoy that?
Oh God, he is a great moderator, but the problem is
He
Kevin
is.
doesn't know how to debate and ends up debating the moderator.
By the way,
And
sorry.
Jaren wants
Oh, I
to
was-
fight back against Flat Earth now because he feels guilty for what he did. So
Yeah.
it was very
Fascinating.
hard for him to when Kevin was then poking at Jaren could not let that go, and I sat back for a lot.
He got baited.
and
I
said Jaren
see.
and Kevin got it. It was incredible.
Wonderful. I can't wait to catch the replay of that. So for anybody who wants to
Yeah.
go check out the replay, check out that. Emma asked a question for FTFE. Do you think teaching religion is abuse too? And you were kind of getting to that at the end. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, I do. I mean, that's because I think all religion is nonsense. And teaching kids that there's a magic man in the sky that can speak the universe into existence is anti-science. However, again, there are limits. Like, if you were just to say to your child, there's a God and you should pray to them every night, but also what they tell you at school is true, then I think that's going to be fine. If you are going to teach a child religion, clearly the Norse religion is correct, because Odin said he would get rid of the ice giants, and I don't see any fucking ice giants.
No frost giants around. Fair point. Dapper, do you have something you want to add to that one?
I will just point out that a government declaring that teaching religion is per se child abuse does in fact meet the definition of the UN for genocide. So I probably think that's a bad idea.
Does it?
Yes.
Interesting.
Any attempt to erase a culture, whether through re-education or through destruction or through kidnapping of children, all constitutes child abuse. So, for instance, if you're going to try to make a child abuse to raise your kid as a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, that would in fact constitute, illegally, that would in fact constitute genocide.
I would posit as a Canadian. So he's Craig's in the UK, Dapper's in the United States, and I'm in Canada. In Canada, we have schools that are funded publicly that are Catholic schools, and we are looking at changing and getting rid of that. And that's not to say that the Catholic schools aren't allowed to exist anymore. They just won't get public funding anymore. So it's not to say we're going to get rid of them, or we're going to say that teaching a belief, because that seems to be kind of what we're touching on, which might be a bigger debate for later, which is teaching a belief, like a personal belief, abuse? Because that seems to be what we're kind of lighting on a little bit, to say that, well, if a religious belief that doesn't have factual basis necessarily and relies on faith, should it be wrong to teach that to your child, which I think is a whole... Now, wrong and abuse are two different things, which is also what we're touching on here. Perhaps a conversation for later, so put a pin in that one, and if that's something you're interested in, please let me know. And if you have people that are interested in debating, please let me know. Next question is for Dapper.
I think I would like to debate...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just saying, I would like to debate whether religion is also a form of abuse.
Absolutely.
Because
yeah.
I think, the
I
world
can
we
think of
live
some
in
people who
now,
have that debate.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a much more nuanced debate than child abuse.
Yes.
With flat Earth,
That's
but
fair.
I think it would be an interesting one.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that one. I'll write it down for later. Rodent No Last Name asked for a question for Dapper and for Craig. Are there other pseudoscience subjects you would consider child abuse? And then they put in parentheses, besides anti-vax. Anti-vax doesn't count. You have to pick something a little bit harder than that. So Dapper, go ahead, and then we'll get Craig.
So first I want to preface this by saying I am not aware of every anti-science thing that has occurred. But I have trouble thinking of an anti-science thing other than anti-vax that I would say I would consider child abuse per se. Now, like I said with Flat Earth, I think a lot of them could become child abuse of various kinds if taken to an extreme, including educational neglect. But actually, you know what? Maybe now this might be cheating because this is basically just anti-vax, but except different. It's like anti-vax dressed up in a different costume. But I might say the miracle mineral solution, where you're just injecting bleach into the anus of autistic children until they shit out their intestines. Yeah, that one sounds like abuse. Oh, you haven't heard of the miracle mineral solution? Yeah, no,
I've never heard of that.
It's fucking horrifying. People have died. It's just industrial bleach.
Yeah.
And you take enemas. It's horrible.
If I was going to answer the question, I know the question wasn't for me, but I'm going to answer the question. I would say anything that is like this, and anything that is like the anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ, like we're going to fix you, I would consider that abuse, and that's more of a belief than
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that one too.
I would put that one out there. Craig, what do you think?
I think it goes back to my argument of flat Earth being like a gateway drug, right? Where if you believe in flat Earth, then everything else is also true. Just teaching children that chemtrails are poison in the sky is not as severe, but it's also very anti-science and can lead down some bad paths. I think teaching any child any obviously false thing could, any of the arguments I've made here could, equally go to them. Chemtrails, anti-vax, climate change denial, lizard people. They all kind of have the same paranoia and stuff behind them. Flat Earth, I think, is the worst. But any of the arguments I've made here today, I think, could apply to any of the pseudoscience nonsense that we see around.
Yeah, fair enough.
I have to apologize to you real quick.
Oh, yeah?
I did not hit like until just now.
You bitch! How dare you! Like my stream!
Everyone else, yes. Like the stream.
Alright. Borg is asking, did the education system deal with ceratosaurs like Dapper? Having a dinosaur in school must have been hard. How did they deal with that?
Yeah, it was particularly hard. But I went to a Catholic high school, and because the Catholics generally accept an old Earth and evolution, it wasn't too bad. It was a little bit awkward in religion class when everyone was talking about the
Shit you lived
salvation
through.
for humankind through the incarnation of Jesus, and it's like, okay, but Jesus didn't incarnate as a Ceratosaurus, so what does that mean?
Whoa.
The religion
Well,
teacher
is
did not have
there
great
like a
questions
Christian
for that.
equivalent for Ceratosauruses? Do you
They
have
get their
like,
own?
is there,
As far as I know.
Ceratosaurus Jesus? You know?
I don't think, not that I'm aware of.
Gosh darn.
Maybe the Ceratosaurus in other parts of the world believe in a Ceratosaurus Jesus, and I just didn't get to hear about him.
Orange Dot asks, my main condition for abuse here is how much nonsense is passing from parent to child. So they're saying, like, is there a scale at which, like, nonsense, quote unquote, meaning, I'm gonna paraphrase nonsense and say nonsense means things that do not have a factual basis. So we can say that there's a factual basis that the earth is not flat. Right? We can say there is a factual basis that evolution happens, right? And so is there like a level at which is like, here's some nonsense that's okay. Like Santa is okay, but the flat earth is not
Easter Bunny
okay.
right now.
Yeah, the Easter Bunny, yeah, for example. So I'll let Craig go first since Dapper went first last time.
Okay.
Right, so I guess I have to be a bit of a hypocrite, right? Because I'm like, don't lie to your kids. Lying to kids like flat Earth and pseudoscience nonsense. It's abuse. But at the same time, I taught my kids that a jolly fat man in a red suit could, go to everyone in the world in one night, which defies all kinds of physics. But I think there's a difference in maintaining wonder around a fabulous time of year to fundamentally altering a child's perception of reality. And here's the thing: I had this conversation with my wife when we had kids, that the second one of my child questions Santa, Dad, is Santa actually real? I wouldn't lie to them. I would lie to them up to the point Santa's gonna, if you do as you're told, or Santa's not gonna bring you presents, blah blah blah. But as soon as the kid was like, Dad, you know what? I think that's a bit stupid. Is Santa actually real? I'd be like, of course not. And that's what I did.
That seems fair. I don't know. I've actually not really seriously considered like what is the minimum amount of nonsense versus the maximum amount or something like that. So perhaps I'm not the right person to answer this question, but I would agree. Like, I don't think that teaching your kid about Santa as if Santa is real when they're very, very young is like abuse. But on the other hand, I'm not sure where I feel intuitively like there would be a level of nonsense that I would consider to be abusive. But since I'm saying that I don't think Flat Earth on its own is, I'm not sure where it would be. Maybe like trying to teach your kid like hard solipsism would be.
Oh shit! Wait, sorry. Oh, Clive Wells, the instructor at uni. He's like, Santa's not real. You could have broken to me. I'm sorry, Clive.
Oh, you ruined it. Oh, you ruined it.
I'll be
bad.
honest though, I have actually considered like, is it actually okay to teach kids about Santa? I mean, it is a lie, and it doesn't really do anything particularly good for them. It's just a fun little thing. And I generally land on like, nah, I don't think it's wrong. But sometimes I do wish I lived in a society where we could have a bit of whimsy without lying about Santa. Then again, in case anyone is wondering, the story about Santa punching a guy at the Council of Nicaea, there's not a whole lot of good historical support for it. And that's where I'll leave that.
So the Tooth Fairies one always makes me laugh, right? Because, I told my kids that the Tooth Fairy was a thing. But also, my wife and I would always fucking forget to put like the £2 under my. So my kid would wake
Tooth
up
Fairy
and
just
like,
hates you.
why did the Tooth Fairy not come? Oh, but like, oh, they were too busy last night. You know.
Jason said, now all the children watching this debate are sad.
Wah, wah.
I actually have thought about it. Probably not as much as Craig, but a little bit more than Dapper. And I think, to me, the difference between, I don't think the things are comparable, because this is something that did come up in the discussions on the community tab. And I definitely recommend you guys go and check it out, because there's some very interesting points over there. Santa is, you are not teaching your kids that Santa is real with physics or math or by poking holes in the theory that Santa isn't real. like you are with Flat Earth. And the same way as you're not teaching your kids that Santa is real, well, you also believe that Santa is real. You're telling this as a story in a context. Now, keep in mind, I would like to point out that I am also from Canada, and we actually have Santa's address to mail Santa. So as you could write mail, write a letter. Yeah, and you can write ho 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 as the like area code, and Santa or an elf will answer you. I had an elf answer me as a child. So there's like a whole thing that is instituted by the government to have Santa answer complex. You. Yeah, so it's way more like, this is far more of like a theory about a government conspiracy, in my opinion, than hiding that the globe is actually flat.
Plus, the US and Canada collude to track Santa via NORAD radar.
That is a true thing that happens.
Yeah.
So take that for what you will. I don't know. Santa's been doxxed. He's at the North Pole, and his postal code is ho ho ho. So you can go and try that if you want. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the next one, which is from Triceratops. And this is a two-part question that sort of they culminated into a third part. So hopefully I get it right. Oh, wow. So if I get it wrong, please correct me. Yeah. Question for Craig. Do you think that a parent who believes in a common conspiracy theory, any common conspiracy, regardless of what it is, and tells their kid about their beliefs is being abusive? And what about a parent with a mild paranoid delusions who says that their kid shouldn't trust people?
Right. Well, I think I made it clear during the debate that it would only constitute abuse if it stops that child benefiting from education and society, right? So if an adult was like, you know what? There was a man on the hill, and JFK was definitely shot by a third person or whatever. It's not going to affect that child in their life, right? Oh, I think that's my wife getting home. So I don't think that necessarily telling children about any conspiracy theory that you believe in, it would be considered abuse. I think it only would be considered abuse when it then stops that child benefiting from what society is trying to give them, mainly education.
Dapper, do you have any thoughts about that one?
No, I think I would agree. But here's the thing, though. I think that is just my position about why it is that teaching someone Flat Earth is not on its own abuse, including educational neglect, because I think that there is a level at which you could teach them that without it rising to that level. So, I don't know. It sounded like Craig just agreed with my position in the debate.
Whoops! Uh-oh. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm sure there's nuance that would clarify.
Yeah.
Disagree, and now we are enemies, and we're gonna have to.
You're gonna hate each other forever. All right, there's a follow-up from Triceratops that says, let's shorten it a little bit. A parent with mild paranoid delusions who talks about those delusions with their child, or a parent with mild AV hallucinations who tells their kids about the voices in static. So if the parent has these issues, are they abusing their kid by informing and teaching and talking to their child about these issues?
I think then that actually goes into other areas where you need to get help for that individual that is suffering from paranoid delusions. And I don't think that the person that is suffering from those paranoid delusions would have the ability to mentally abuse their child on purpose.
Yeah, I think that there's like a really big contextual, there's a contextual issue here, right? The context is, do you know that they're paranoid delusions? Because if you know, then you're not teaching them they're real, you're just teaching them that they exist. And there's a difference between teaching a child that people think the earth is flat, is different than teaching your child that the earth is flat.
Yeah, I think intervention is important, right? I think if there's intervention and it works and the abuse can be negated or reduced or fixed, then the problem goes away. But like Flat Earth, and if it keeps going to the point where the child is then not benefiting from the education and its educational neglect, and therefore is by definition abuse, then the same can be applied if you are pushing your paranoid delusions onto a child. But in those cases, intervention is even more important, and getting help for the person is also important.
Yeah, reasonable. What do you think, Dapper?
I think I am unreasonably biased on this topic as a result of things to do with events in my personal life, and I'm going to bow out on that one because I don't think
totally
I
fair.
an adequate answer.
Yeah, no, that's reasonable.
Fair enough.
Templar in the chat, we've only got 3 more questions left, and that should wrap us up at just after an hour and a half, which is pretty good. Templar said, FTFE, since you have used a lot of already existing standards, why are they not already adequate for coverage of teaching flat earth as abuse? Is there a difference? So they're talking about, like, is there... The standards of abuse already exists. Are those not adequate, or is there a reason that they should be advanced?
I think we need to look at the, if we're ever going to consider if something is abuse or not, we need to look at the legal definitions as to what constitutes abuse. And I think I made it clear in my position in the debate that when it comes down to stopping a child benefiting from educational things and stopping making them reject education or whatever, that is when it is abuse. Okay. There is context to everything, and there is levels of everything. But in my experience with Flat Earth, there isn't any, it's just, I'm going to say this and just leave it at that. If you're a Flat Earther, you're going to push it, and you're going to push it, and you're going to push it. And if you are doing that to a child, you're not just going to let it go. If you're a Flat Earther, you have to be right. And that includes to your children. I don't think there's going to be the softly, the Earth's flat, but just believe what the school tells you. If you're dumb enough to go and teach your kids the Earth is flat, then you're going to be pushing it as hard as you do to all your echo chambers online. And then that's when we have to look at the standards that are already in place and apply them.
Do you have an addition to that, Dapper?
I think that sorry, I was looking at the chat. I think
no
that
worries.
in terms of legal definitions for child abuse in regards to Flat Earth, I think that if the teaching of Flat Earth rises to the level of child abuse, which I've already said, it is my position that it can. I just don't think it has to, like a logical necessity. I think the legal definitions in that regard are probably fine with things like educational neglect. But I think I would like to see more training for social workers who might encounter Flat Earth, because I do think it's a warning sign for other forms of abuse. Because let's be honest,
sure,
Flat Earthers tend to be horrific, vile pieces of shit, in addition to being Flat Earthers, which means that they are likely, regardless of whether or not Flat Earth is child abuse, it seems to me like there's a fairly high chance that if they are caretakers for children, that those children are going to be abused in some way or another, even if it's not through that particular means. And so I would like to see that, more training, and maybe that could even be in the form of a statute that says, hey, we're setting aside this much money and requiring social workers to get this many hours of training on Flat Earth stuff as like
conspiracy or belief system issues. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that.
Truth and Nerds for 2 said Craig called Santa ellipses and his elf as a super chat. Very funny. Babatend asked for both of you, and we'll let Dapper go first this time, says, which is worse, a parent who tells their kid that the earth is flat and just pay attention in school, or a parent who says nothing about earth but says don't believe?
If we mean don't believe school, I would say, that's a tough one. Because one thing is, I don't know of anyone who would do that. I've never heard of a case of that. I would say overall, though, because school is supposed to prepare you to be an adult who can do things like read and perform basic functions at like a job or in society, I think it would probably be worse to say to your kid, like, hey, ignore everything they teach you in school, but then like keep hush hush about what you believe, versus just saying, hey, these things are telling you in school are dumb and bad, but also like you need to learn how to read and do your multiplication tables. So like, pay attention to that. I think that, the never believe anything in school would probably be worse. But I would really have to think about it to be very confident in that answer.
I feel like there's a scale, but go ahead, Craig. What do you think?
I completely agree with what Dapper said there. If you're telling people to just not believe what you're at school, that's bad. Just don't do that. School is there to educate your children and help you be functional members of society.
I think there's a scale in which, again, I know the question's not for me. I'm sorry, I'm participating anyway. I think that there's a degree of skepticism that is healthy that says, hey, listen, pay attention in school, learn what you can, but that doesn't mean you have to believe it because it came from school. Have your own reasoning for believing why you believe what you believe or why you think what you think. Don't just because a teacher told you so, because not every teacher is going to be right and not every teacher necessarily has good intentions, right? So I think that there's a scale here, but I do think that it is a matter of, like, if you want to trust education as a whole or not. And I do think there's a really big difference between the UK education, the American education system, and the Canadian education system. So I think you're going to get some really wacky nonsense coming from all
it's mostly
three.
hockey in Canada, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
All physics is done in hockey sticks and pucks.
Yes. And also,
I am going to have to wrap up because my wife's just got back from a big day out and she's falling all over the place.
All right, got two things. We'll go through them real fast. We'll let Craig go twice, then we'll let Dapper go, and then we'll get on out of here. Prixie Purple said, for FTFE specifically, which is why I'm asking you this one specifically, is there any conceivable way that mild teaching of Flat Earth does not inhibit a child's education?
No, I don't think so. I think Flat Earth fundamentally rejects education. Yeah.
All right, and we have another debate question that has been posed to us, which I think is going to have to be a whole nother debate, which is child's rights versus parents' rights. Which are the priority? And I don't think that's a fair question to ask either of our debaters right now. So I want to let Dapper answer the last question. I really feel like, because this is one by land, two, and I think that is a legitimate question that needs to be a whole other debate. So I did have it noted for you, but we're going to put this off to the side and shelve it for now. Dapper, what do you think about Prixie's question?
So I think to some degree it's going to hinder education no matter what. But like I said, there is a...
Hindering doesn't equal abuse is what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, because anything that you teach your kid that's silly is going to be hindering. And I've seen people teach some very silly things, but I wouldn't consider those to be abuse just because they're silly and wrong.
Fair enough.
So I would say that there probably is a level at which it's not going to hinder education to the point that it matters. But I would be very surprised to find any flat earther actually being so mild. Because actually, I do think that most flat earthers are probably neglecting their children's education. I just don't think that it's logically required that teaching flat earth be that extreme.
Constitutes the legal. All right, so to wrap up, I asked the debate question to the chat on my side. I said, is it child abuse to teach a child or children that the earth is flat? And as opposed to originally, only 57% said yes, 20% said no, 20% said other, and 3% said neither out of 76 votes. So just for clarification, 74% said yes, it is child abuse, 10% said no, 11% said unsure, and 5% said unclear. So I do think we have changed some minds today. I look forward to seeing your arguments and what things did change your mind in the comment section down below. Please let us know. And if you are curious, please go to the community tab and give us your thoughts over there. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. Let us know how you felt about this debate, what you thought about it, what you think needs to be added in the future, what debates you want to see. And guys, shill your shit and get the fuck out of here. Craig, you go first.
Hey, I'm FTFE. Yeah, I'm FTFE. You can find me at FTFE on these YouTubes. I argue with flat earthers because I guess I fucking hate myself. Thanks for having me on, Chess. Dapper, always a pleasure. Looking forward to the next season of Endurance.
Yeah, hell yeah. On Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Dapper, what's going on with you? Shill your shit and get the fuck out of here.
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you, because that means I am the more persuasive person, which means that by my personal definition, I won the debate. I will not be answering questions about that.
Now you sound like a Flerf.
Gonna have a victory stream after this? No, I'm actually not. But no, I'm Dapper Dinosaur. My channel is linked in the video name. So please come check me out if you like me, or you dislike young Earth creationism, or even other things like mud flood stuff. I do some of that sometimes. And also, if you want to support me, I do have like 5 months worth of pre-recorded videos in the can up on YouTube for early access. So if you like me and you toss me like $1, you can get like 20 or something hours worth of content for like $1. So, you know.
Boom.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching on FTFE's channel, Craig's channel, thank you so much for joining us. This will be also like a streamed on Dapper's channel that'll show up after this is over. Both of them are more than welcome to mirror this on their channel as they see fit. I greatly appreciate it. We'll see you all on Friday over on Top Hats Off. If you want to see me being a shitter on my own channel, you can see it there. And if you want to support us and you want to support a new, more healthy, less toxic debate channel, please subscribe, please send your friends, please send us on over here. We're going to try and build this into a more positive place than, you know, the non sequitur shore was, than modern day debates currently is. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get on out of here. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.